Hey guys, I am back and I am going to do a video today. I'm going to cover a topic that, I have been asked about a bunch of times. I have discussed in the comments with some people. I have flat out fought in the comments with some people. We're going to talk about Damascus. We're going to talk about fake Damascus versus real Damascus. We're going to talk about handmade Damascus versus production Damascus. And we're going to have a little talk about, first we're going to talk about the history of it just briefly, just really briefly, and then we're going to look at some examples of different Damascus steels that you might find on the market and sort of their relevance and what they are. And really what this is motivated, so this is partially a viewer request, and this is partially, hopefully we can reach kind of an understanding on what is, super air quotes, real Damascus, and what is fake Damascus, and what is not, because there's a lot of kind of I don't know. There's personal opinion, there's some misunderstanding, and then there's also what you choose to count it as or whatever. So I'm not sure how long this video is going to be, but you guys know I like to talk, so let's go. So Damascus steel. Damascus steel is gorgeous. It is a work of art of itself. I mean, forget about just the knife or the piece it comes a part of. Damascus steel is its own work when you look at it, when you look at patterns of it. And Damascus steel can be very expensive. It is it's very sought after. People love Damascus steel. Some people do not like Damascus steel. Some people don't like the expense of it. Damascus steel, when done right, can last generations and generations. Damascus steel, when done cheesy and wrong, just looks terrible. Just looks terrible. So Damascus steel has been with us for thousands of years. And here's the funny part. So when we talk about, some people talk about real Damascus, they refuse to accept anything except the original, going back to about 900 AD, what we would call Wootz steel. Anything besides that is fake. And here's the kicker. Nobody honestly knows 100% how Wootz was made, and nobody can replicate the exact way that Wootz was made. Back in the day. And so we're talking about going all the way back to the Near East. Again, between this is what they estimated as, the metallurgists and stuff, between 900 and 1700. That's when kind of the real stuff, the original stuff was made. And after somewhere around 1700, the recipe was lost. It was forgotten. And, that original kind of stuff was no longer made. Some people will say that the actual Wootz steel, which was actually comes from around the area of India, really wasn't actually made after 1300. It was just a variation of it. Do you guys remember this dude right here? And that so it was kind of made in India, and then the steel was either exported to with swords made in, or it was very popularly sold in Syria, in Damascus, and that's where we get the term Damascus steel, because there's different manufacturing types way back 1,000 years ago that all kind of get lumped into this term Damascus. Now when we talk about Damascus today, really what we generally mean for the most part is layered composited steels, usually a stainless type or a nickel kind of alloy, and a nickel stainless steel and a carbon stainless steel that are put together, right? Multiple layers of it, billets. They are heat forged, and they are folded repeatedly over and over and forged out into one billet that is then worked into a shape, and as it is worked and folded and worked and folded, you get these beautiful patterns in it. That is so any kind of steel, number one, that is folded and is dissimilar steels put together. We kind of throw the term Damascus on there. Again, depending on your personal interpretation, that may be correct, that may be incorrect. There are those purists who say if it is not a Wootz steel from that place, it is not correct. But according to that definition, then nothing since about 1700 counts as Damascus steel. And I understand there are those very purist interpretations of it. I get that way about certain things too. You want to talk about Star Wars canon versus non-canon, and the original canon versus the extended universe? I will get snotty about stuff, but that's my geek coming out. But I accept the definition that Damascus counts as any of the layered, composited, folded steels, as the modern day definition of Damascus. So when I'm looking at something and I say it's a Damascus steel, what I'm talking about is we've got our two different types of steels. The stainless, that's usually the shiny part, and then the carbon, that's the not so shiny part. They are layered, they are composited, and they are welded together, heat forged together, and turned into one billet that can be worked. Now, I haven't forged anything in a really long time. My Damascus skills are, let me say, if you want a good analogy, a 4-year-old stealing a car and driving it on the freeway is probably a better situation than my attempt to make Damascus. It's an incredible skill. It's an art form to do it correctly. When you do it and you end up with air pockets in between the layers of steel, that's called inclusions. When I try to do it and it's full of inclusions and disgusting blemishes, and you really have to know the two steels you're working and the heat levels that it takes to put them together and evenly apply the force and hammer pressure, and it is a true art form. When it's all done and you have your blade or whatever you're doing, you take it and you give it an acid dip, and then you cleanse that acid off and rinse it, and that's what gives the patterns, because the carbon steel reacts more strongly to the acid, and it eats away a little bit more than the stainless, and that's why you can actually feel the pattern, because it's eating away just so much more of the carbon steel, and that's why you also get that very dark look to the carbon steel. So if you guys think of any times on my channel or anyone else's when you've seen an acid washed blade, the acid washed area takes on that dark color, that's basically what's happening. So you're acid washing the whole thing, but you're not leaving in there for a long time to acid wash everything. You're just giving it like a dip to build that contrast between the stainless and the carbon steel, and it looks great. So, when we talk about the difference between the original Wootz steel, the original Damascus steel, which technically no one today knows how to make. A lot of people have their personal recipes and their personal way to do it. If that's the only real Damascus, then we might as well stop this video right now, because there is nothing else. Everything else is fake Damascus. And that means that no one else can produce anything. All right, but I already told you, I don't subscribe to that opinion. I believe that there are excellent makers today that can make a Damascus billet. And this, for example, is a hand-forged Damascus billet. This is by Snake River Knives. That's a small shop in Idaho. And this is, I'm going to zoom in so I don't get shadows from the light. This is a beautiful pattern. This is made to fit in a griptilian handle. So this is a Wilkins grip handle with the Snake River blade in there. And you can see there's actual lines where it was folded. So this is an actual real hand-forged Damascus blade. You can see there are all these fold marks on the spine. I can get it to focus there. All right, and that's one of the things you're going to look for. We're going to talk about how do you tell fake from not. All these lines, it's not just on the sides. It's folded all the way through. So it's, you know, a continuous pattern, and you can even see it's all the way around the knife. It's everywhere there. And I just love the look of this one. And there's all different kinds of patterns. And the really experienced makers know how to get teardrops. I mean, I'm not going to go through all the patterns, but they know exactly how to fold it and twist it and do whatever you have to do to get the specific pattern you want. Now, handmade Damascus is very expensive because it is a process. And, you know, if a lot of people don't understand why custom-made knives are so expensive. But if you have ever sat at a grinder, sat at a forge, and put the time into, you know how much work goes in transforming a billet of steel. Whether you go through the process of actually forging it at a forge, believe that is a workout. You will lose pounds of sweat just in front of the forge at, you know, however hot, between 12 and 1800 degrees, you know, and then it looks on TV like you're hitting something soft, you know, when you've got that red hot metal, but you're still hitting steel. It is not soft. I mean, it takes force. The skill to make a Damascus billet is incredible, and to have it turn out right. So that's very expensive, and, you know, if you can afford that, that's great. More power to you. Not everybody can, and I'll you know, this was not. I got a good deal on this, I'll say. I should have paid a lot more for this, even though it's small. But real hand-forged Damascus is pretty expensive because it's, you know, it's, each one is different. You're not going to find two identical pieces. Now, there is an alternate way to make Damascus steel that is much more affordable, and that is what I like to call it production Damascus. Just like knives can be hand forged and hand ground, you can also make knives on a production line, and you could do the same thing with a Damascus steel. They have machines that will do you'll feed the billets into the machine, and it will heat them. It will use hydraulic presses to squeeze them together, to hammer them, to fold them. And they'll just make a whole bunch all at once. Now, just like when you are looking at a handmade knife versus a production knife, you know, it's a much more impersonal process. There may be prone to be production line style imperfections and everything in the blade, in the pattern, whatever. But it puts Damascus in reach of, you know, a lot more people. Is it fake Damascus? No, because technically it is the process of compositing different kinds of steel, heating them, you know, forging them together, folding them, you know, forging them again, and so on and so on. This is an old discontinued knife by Off Grid Knives. The reason that Carrie, the owner of Off Grid Knives, stopped making it was because people just kept calling it a fake Damascus knife. It is not. It is a real Damascus. Now, one of the kind of the things you can look at, and I'm not saying that handmade Damascus doesn't have this kind of look, but you see how the striation is all one way? That's kind of one of the hallmarks of production Damascus. And you'll see that a lot as we go. This knife is a Damascus steel knife. It was a production Damascus, though, not a handmade knife. So that lets a company like Off Grid produce in a production facility a lot of actual Damascus steel, not handmade, but production made at a lower cost, so people can buy a real Damascus steel knife. The steels used might be the exact same in this hand-forged one versus this production one. You're going to notice some imperfections, you know, in this hand-forged one. Like, if you look really closely, you'll see the angles over here at the top of the swedge are off just a little bit, you know, because it's handmade. It's got that quality to it. I guarantee that every single blade on every single one of these knives, I don't remember the model number, this is a few, you know, years old, are exactly the same because they're done in a production line. But, you know, people, even when I did a little review on this knife, said like, oh, that's fake Damascus. No, it's not. It is a real Damascus blade done on a production line. Now, there is fake Damascus out there, and here is one, and you can kind of look at it and immediately see the difference. It is acid treated, right, or even maybe sandblasted, I don't know, but you can look and see that this is all one homogeneous piece of steel. This is not real Damascus at all. Another thing they might do is they will etch the Damascus pattern into it, or 3D print the Damascus on there. It's very apparent. I don't have any other, truly fake Damascus knives to show you. But if you look up here, you can see on the spine, there's no pattern. There's just these like indents from where they either, blasted out or acid kind of etched it out. But if you compare it to any one of these other ones, you can see there's a clear difference in how the steel looks. So this is a Boker Magnum, right? Cheap line from Boker. This one is very easy to see. There are some that are not as easy to see. But, a lot of times you can feel. Now, I'm going to be putting my foot in my mouth here because I'm going to say that there's a ridiculous overdone texture on fake Damascus that you can feel. On the handmade Damascus, you can feel it too. But, it's just something you'd have to put side by side and feel and understand. If you guys remember this, this came from the Knife City box. This is the fuck you stick. Remember the tri-dagger? Now, I got to admit, I didn't take great care of this thing, and it got pretty rusty. So a lot of people said this was a fake Damascus, and I said, no, it is a real Damascus. It's a production Damascus. And one of the ways I could tell is that you look in every groove, you can see the striations of the pattern. Even in this dimple here, you can see the lines. Okay, if it was a fake Damascus, you wouldn't have the lines going in that indent. You probably wouldn't have the lines in every little recess there. And one of the ways I was able to tell for sure that this is true Damascus is because it had built up rust, I actually gave it an acid bath in some muriatic acid and to get rid of the rust. And what you can see now is that you still have all of the pattern and you have the pitting of where the rust really bit in, but you still have all of your Damascus pattern. If it was fake, that would all come off. It would just look like a piece of homogeneous steel. So this is a real Damascus tri-dagger. It's just, I'm sure this is not hand forged. It's a piece of production Damascus steel that was probably just done up in a machine. But absolutely a real as opposed to a fake printed piece of Damascus steel. This guy came to us in Battle Box from Knife of the Month. It's by Bastion. This one is also a production Damascus. You can barely feel the difference in the layers. So, very brief acid wash to get the difference in the steels to come out. And you can kind of see again the line down the middle. If you run your finger over it, you kind of feel it, but the other ones have more of a texture between the steels. I've had this for a while. And this one again, this is a good one because if you look on the spine, if it'll focus for me, you can see all the layers lined up. Not just, a few of them. This has every single layer of steel in there. And then, can I get that to focus there? That's a great shot right there of all the folds and everything. So this one needs a little TLC as well. You see how it's got a little rust. But you see also how the rust is really settling in the carbon steel and kind of skipping off the stainless steel. That shows you for sure you've got two layers, two different steels. As it's kind of settling in the corrosion. There's a great example. A great example of me not taking good enough care of this knife, but also of you've got the corrosion settling in the carbon and kind of ignoring the stainless a little bit. So this is a handmade Damascus blade. well, billet that's been forged into a blade, and you can see in all the cutouts and everything. You've got all the lines and everything. So there, there's a lot of different ways when we look at Damascus to see. Oh, I'm sorry, this one I didn't talk about. I showed you a couple times. This is by Cool Hand, and this is also a production Damascus. So you look, if you can see on the spine again, we've got the horizontal striations down the blade, which is like, again, one of those sure signs that it's, production Damascus. But also you can see all along the billet we still have all those lines. So it's true Damascus. It's the production Damascus again, and you can feel the difference between the acid wash texture on the carbon steel and the raised, just slightly higher surface of the stainless steel. So there's lots of different ways to go about this when you're looking at Damascus steel. Is it real or is it fake? Fake. Once you get a little experience, you can tell the fake Damascus right away from our two different real ones, from our production and our handmade. Unfortunately, price used to be the main way to tell. Before we had a lot of this production Damascus around, anything that was affordable was fake. It was really easy to tell. Now, not so much. So sometimes when you're looking at an affordable Damascus blade, you got to ask yourself, okay, so what is it? Now, if it is like a $19 Damascus knife, that's fake. Don't go near it. If you've got a mid-range price though, it could just be a great deal on real Damascus, or it could be a production Damascus. And then you've got to factor in, okay, let's look at everything else on the knife and decide. So this one, I can't remember the actual price. It was a mid-range price, but you also have, besides the production Damascus, you have this really cool multicolor G10. You've got this really cool sculpted handle. So there's a lot going on with this one that would kind of justify that price. The off-grid one had this beautiful micarta handle, nice scalloped Anzo kind of pattern on it. So it was about $60. Good price for production Damascus. This one, I can't remember, but it was pretty expensive. But you got like the brass bolster and the carbon fiber handle. If any of these were being sold for like $20, I'd be very suspicious and think, probably fake Damascus all the way through. This blade was more than the price of any of these complete knives. So for sure, definitely real Damascus. And just as I'll throw this in there, Snake River Knives makes a lot of beautiful stuff. I really like his work. I don't have any kind of connection with him or anything, but he sells a lot of stuff on eBay, including full blanks that you can make your own stuff out of. So you can check them out if you want. I have a few different things by Snake River Knives because I used to live. Some of you guys know I spent 8.5 years stationed in Idaho, so it was just nice that he was like right there. I got fast shipping and everything. So that's why I bought a lot of stuff from Snake River Knives. And this has held up beautifully throughout the years. All right. Yeah. One final thing that we'll talk about is the quality of the steels that you get with Damascus knives. So they can range all over the place. When you get a production Damascus, it's very rare for you to actually find out what kind of steel you're getting. When you get a real handmade steel, Damascus steel, that maker is most likely going to tell you. And very often it's like 1095 carbon steel, and then I can't remember. It's like what is it, 5N15 or something like that. I'll put it in text if I'm getting it wrong, but it's a nickel alloy stainless steel. They go together very well, and the nickel alloy steel gives you this beautiful shiny layer on top. It's not at all unexpected to not know what steels they're putting together inside your Damascus steel, production steel products. It's a good idea to look, because it's better to know than not know. But you might have to actually ask the question, what are the steels that are being composited here? For sure it's going to be a carbon steel and a stainless steel, because that's how you get that contrast. of the dark and the light. But you know, it's if they're not willing to tell you, you might want to move on to another person who's proud to tell you what kind of steel they're using. You probably are not going to find like a combination of S35VN or, you know, S30V or something like that, because the truth is it's not worth the price of the steel to put in with a carbon steel. You know, the whole point of a super steel like that is that it, you know, you're buying your super corrosion resistance and super edge retention and all that. And if you're just going to mix it with a high carbon steel that's going to introduce an element of being open to corrosion and all that kind of stuff, it just doesn't pay to have the expense of that super high quality stainless steel mixed in with the, you know, because depending on, like, when you use this over and over, and you sharpen it as you go, you're going to be working through, and I mean this is over a long time, layers of the stainless and the carbon and stainless and the carbon, right? You're just not going to get those combinations, but you're going to get a good, excellent, you know, good quality steels together. And the good properties of the one are going to compound with the good properties of the other, and you're going to get an excellent balance of steels, even when you're not using the top of the line, like, best out there steels together. You don't need to. So don't waste your time looking for like a super like M390. You know, hopefully this video has equipped some people who always had those questions about real versus fake, and then were confused about handmade versus production. Hopefully it's equipped you with a little bit of knowledge that makes it a little easier to go about the process of looking for it. You know, and of course I'm always open to answer questions, and of course I'm always open to answer more questions for you guys. If anybody is wondering if this video did not answer a specific question you had, I'm not in a position to always tell you specifically this knife has this knife has that, but there are some good generalities that, you know, when we look at some listings, you know, we can tell you it has this. Typically a knife that has a handmade blade, they want to advertise that, so they're going to tell you like handmade. But never hurts to ask the question, you know. All right, so like I said, I hope this was helpful. I hope this was the kind of information that you guys who have been asking me have been looking for. Please always feel free to, like, if you've got an idea for what you want to see in a video, or you got a question that you know you think maybe I could help out and answer, send that to QuestionsForDocP@gmail.com. You'll also find a link to it directly in the video description. Always here for you guys, because it's the viewers who make this channel, you know, something more than like a glorified video photo album. And until the next time, please remember, you guys are all absolutely awesome. I do appreciate every single one of you, and I will be back again real soon.